Well, a very good afternoon to you, everyone. Welcome to our Coaching Cafe for today. Happy Friday to you all. And it's Natalie Ashdown here with you. I know some of you might be disappointed. You might have been expecting Bridget to join the line, but she's actually has something else on today. So I've got her slide pack and all of her ideas, and I'm going to present them to you today. So it's Natalie Ashdown here with you. And today we're going to be talking about what's the difference between good coaching and great coaching. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on the lands on which we meet today and their continuing connection to the land, waters and communities of Australia. And we pay our respects to them and to their elders, past, present and emerging. So our agendas for today, as I said, I've stolen all of Bridget's ideas, all her slide pack. For those of you that don't know, Bridget has been coaching now for over 15 years. And for the past 15 years also, she has been the assessor for our Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching program and our Diploma of Workplace and Business Coaching program. And I know a lot of you on the line would know and love Bridget. She's a PCC and she's also ICF trained. She's an ICF trained assessor as well at the PCC level. So she brings an absolutely enormous amount of knowledge and experience to our session today, even though I'm presenting for her. And these are her ideas about the differences across thousands of coaching recordings that she's actually listened to, the differences between good coaching and great coaching. And I would be really keen to hear from yourselves as well. What do you think the actual differences are? So it's not just about us sharing, it's also about us, everybody on the line sharing their knowledge as well. So we'll take a quick look at the definition of coaching from the ICF. We'll look at good coaching, great coaching, and as I mentioned, look at the difference between good coaching and great coaching. And also when Bridget is making assessments of coaching, for example, if you need to put a recording into the ICF for one of your credentials, maybe you're going for ACC, PCC, maybe you're going for MCC, there are actually some markers that have been released by the ICF that will allow us to deem whether a coaching session is actually competent, hitting all of the ICF core competencies or not yet competent. Now, unfortunately, from an ICF point of view, if you submit a recording, it's either pass or fail. So in Australia, with our accreditation process, you're competent or you're not yet competent. So we want you to see you demonstrate other skills. So just a little bit of a difference there. If you are new to the Coaching Cafe, welcome. We are all about creating a community. We come together every Friday at this time, at 12 noon on Melbourne time. And we are about creating a shared learning experience, creating thought-provoking conversations. The way that you can interact with us is via the chat box, and I'll pick up your messages, your comments, your questions in the chat box. And of course, to all of those regulars who are back today and you come every single Friday, thank you so much. I love presenting the Coaching Cafe to you. I love learning from you. So it's always great to see so many people coming on the line. Alrighty, let's get into it. Oh, by the way, if you are collecting your, thank you, Maribel, you're so kind. She says, we love what you do too. If you are collecting your ICF CCEs, I am going to try to put a message into the chat box at the end of this session. I just looked and I'm not sure whether I'm able to do that. I'm going to put the CCE certificate into the chat box. If I can't do it, then as always, contact us at support@opendoorcoaching.com.au. And if you're listening to this session live, you're able to get a CCE certificate. I'll see what I can do at the end of the session. I wanted to do something quite clever and drop the certificate in to the chat box, but I'm not exactly sure if I can do that. Anyway, let's carry on. So in the International Coach Federation definition of coaching, I really do like this definition actually. They talk about coaches ourselves partnering with clients in a thought-provoking, a creative process that inspires our clients to maximize their personal and professional potential. And I like all of those words, the thought-provoking, creative process. You could add in there a safe and supportive process. that enables us to really bring out the best in the clients that we're working with, really maximizing their potential. So when it comes to ICF core competencies, when it comes to thinking about the differences between good coaching and great coaching, what we are really looking for is for the coaches that come through our coaching programs to demonstrate the foundations of coaching practice. And at the same time, really build your skills around coaching as you go. And of course, that's why we're here today, isn't it? That's why we do the coaching cafes, to continue to build our skills. So let's take a look at what good coaching looks like. So if you are actually going for example, your ACC, your Associate Credentialed Coach credential with the International Coach Federation. This is a score out of 9, by the way. So feel free to give yourselves a score. I am sure with the wealth of knowledge and experience we have on the line, we're going to get lots of 9s. But, check for yourself, have a reflection for yourself. Is this what you're doing when you're actually coaching? Here we go. So whenever we're doing really good coaching, we're establishing a really clear goal for the conversation. And a good coach will actually spend a little bit of time up front actually getting really clear about the goal. A good coach will also loop backwards. So if the goal changes, we might also loop backwards and go, okay, now at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned this. Is that still relevant? So nice, clear goal up front. Give yourself a tick. Clearly focused on what the coachee wants to talk about. Now, some rookie coaches that are kind of just starting out, the coachee might offer 2 or 3 different topics, and we see beginner coaches going, all right, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. So the coach is actually picking the topic. But where we see really good coaching is when the coach is really focused on what the coachee wants to talk about. Now, this applies whether we're doing professional coaching, whether we're coaching across our workplaces, or even if we're doing, personal coaching with people around us at home, with partners, kids, etc. Of course, we're building that trust and rapport with a client and with our coachee. That is what one of the major features of a coaching conversation is, that confidential conversation where we can build trust and rapport and allow the person to open up. You should be getting lots of ticks, I think. Demonstrate presence. Now, when I was going for my MCC credential, this is 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't really understand what demonstrate presence really meant. It was something I had to really work on. If we're doing good coaching though, that presence means that we are really focused. We are here for the client. There's nothing else that's getting in our way. No distractions, no thoughts, no what are we having for dinners, anything like that. And I see good coaching and presence as like a cocoon. I've been coaching in a cafe, for example, and everything else is blanked out around us. And I coached one client where they were packing up the chairs and packing up the whole of their cafe because it was closing time. And myself and the client didn't even realize. So we had created that cocoon, that presence where we're kind of in that partnership and in a lovely cocoon. Non-judgmental, very, very important. So we get this question a lot when we're doing workplace coaching, like when we're delivering our programs and teaching new managers to coach. They often say, well, what if you think that what the person's saying is not relevant? Or what if you think what the person is saying is unachievable? So that's really judgment. That's where we kind of think about judgmental. So if we're being judgmental, we're thinking, oh, that's not going to be possible. What happens in the workplace is when managers are switching to coaching their people, they have an idea about what the answer is, what the solution to the problem is. And so that's where the judgmental can come up. But, as good coaches, we're staying out of judgments. We're allowing the client or the coachee to actually judge for themselves what they think is actually possible. It's often a bit of a sticking point, actually. It's like, well, what do we do? Let them fail if you know it's not going to be realistic. And my answer to that is, well, no, not necessarily, but we might ask additional questions, but not in a judgmental format, if that makes sense. Yeah, thank you, Guy. Thanks for jumping in there. I totally agree with you. Guys often test their thinking with further questions. Yeah. Guy, I do like it when you summarize perfectly what I'm trying to say. That's exactly what we're talking about, testing their thinking with further questions. That's the way. As a good coach, we'll be asking open questions in response to what the coachee is actually saying or the coachee's context. Now, this is really important. As we get better and better at our coaching, we are still using our frameworks and our models. For example, if you've come through the Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching, you're still calling on your coaching toolkit. You're still using your coaching frameworks. But the questions that we're forming are coming from what the client is actually saying, using those words and then feeding them back to the client. So, for example, if a person says, oh, my goal is to be more confident when I'm actually in a board meeting, then we might say, well, what does confidence mean to you? What does confidence look like? So we're taking their question and we're giving back, we're taking their statement and we're giving them back a question that's born out of that context. Now, if a person said, I want to be really more confident in a board meeting, and the coach said, well, what does that look like? When you're out on the soccer field, it's like, well, the coach, if the coach knew that the person played soccer, for example, but can you feel like even in that example, it's a little bit jarring? It's like, well, I'm talking about confidence in a board meeting, not soccer. So anyway, I'm sure you're giving yourselves ticks here, but we want to just sharpen that up a little bit, make sure it's coming from what the coachee is actually saying. The good coaching, particularly at the ACC level. So what we're hearing, if you're going for the ACC level, so for those of you that don't know, the associate level for the International Coach Federation, you will have done your coach training hours. You will have clocked 60 hours of coach training, plus you will have done mentoring, and you will have clocked up a further 100 hours of coaching. So they're the main criteria. And what we notice at that level is when a person's doing really nice coaching, really good coaching, they're demonstrating awareness. They're working with the client. It's at the level of what will solve the problem. So the coaching at ACC level is often around problem solving. So the person has brought a goal to the session. There's a problem, for example. They've brought a goal, but there's normally something getting in their way, some sort of problem, something that needs to be solved in the reality, if you like. And the coach is working on that, try to help the person move forward, solve their problem, achieve their goals, etc., etc. Now, it might be that the client doesn't have any problems. They're really just aiming to achieve their goal. And with that also, the coach is mostly focused on the goal, what's going to move you forward. Now, that's really good coaching. There is a difference, though, when it comes to really great coaching, and I'll pick that up. So just bear that in mind for now. Of course, at the end, a really good coaching, they'll be establishing some really nice action plans, some good action plans, some accountability on the part of the coachee. The coachee is taking responsibility, they're being accountable, they feel really strong, potentially really confident in how they're going to move forward. There's some sort of actions and plans happening there. So there you go. What else have we got? We've got one more, one more. Oh, of course, good coaching, allowing the coachee to find their own answers. Now, this is really important because when you're going for your ICF exams, if you switch over to mentoring, which I know there's a lot of mentors on the line, you're wonderful, experienced coaches and mentors, subject matter experts. If you switch over to mentoring during your coaching conversation, particularly one that you submit for an assessment, that's actually a failure. In our terms, it'd be not yet competent. In the ICF terms, it'd be failed. And you'll have to fork out another $150 or something like that to reset. So really, what's most important here is that we are holding that space, that we are allowing the coachee to find their own answers. And when we do that and we allow that silence, that pause, even allow the coachee to struggle a little bit, even allow them to be a bit uncertain and not be really sure about, which ways they can move forward. That's all really good coaching as well, just holding that space. So there you go. Give yourself a score out of 9. Please feel free to jump onto the chat box. Tell me, tell me your scores. I'm sure you'll all achieve 9. And tell me anything else you want to add here also around good coaching, just at this level. So we're not talking about PCC, EMCC level, just at the really solid, great level of coaching. I'm a bit of a nerd, actually. I just love listening to good coaching. When I'm wandering around, when I'm delivering the Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching program, and I'm wandering around and listening to the coach, I just love to hear good questions. And then I pause for a second and see the impact of that question on the person. It's really nice. I am a total nerd in that regards. Alrighty. So that's nice, solid, good coaching. Really happy with that. Thank you for adding that too, Maribel. She says that we have to, as good coaches, we're very conscious of the time management as well. So yeah, we're keeping an eye on the time, making sure that coaching session doesn't run over, for hours on end. We're also managing the time in terms of moving the coachee through the process. So we're not spending all the time on a goal unless that's where they want to spend their time up front in the goal. We're moving them through the process to get that action. That's very good. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. You're giving enough time to get those action plans in place. So, keeping the pace to achieve that towards the end. Yeah. Good one. Thank you. All right, let's go on then. Let's take a look at what really great coaching looks like. And now we're really pushing ourselves into the level of high ACC. So we're looking at a high score around associate level, or even pushing now into PCC level as well. There's some quite clear distinctions. Coaches and assessors like Bridget can hear the difference when she's listening to a coaching recording. As I mentioned, she's done thousands of them. It's actually a lovely skill to have, actually, and these are the things that she's actually shared with us. So when a coach is doing really great coaching, then they'll take more time to establish the agreement, the coaching agreement up front, and then link that to past conversations. So previously it was just establish the goal and move on. Now it's taking more time to establish the agreement and link that agreement past through to what's happened in the past. So how does what you're talking about today link through to other conversations that we've had? So there's a nice process there that's making the coaching session not just a once-off, but a more of a longitudinal process. And when we talk about establishing the agreement, any of you that might go and revisit the ICF core competencies, you can go back and take a look at the tables on the ICF website, coachfederation.org. Establishing the agreement is so much more than just saying, what's the goal? We're really trying to establish what is it that the person would like to achieve, but also why is it important? What are the measures of success? How will they know at the end of this coaching conversation that they've actually achieved that goal? So all of a sudden, there's other questions we're going to ask now to firmly establish what that agreement is for the coaching, not just setting the goal. What would it mean to achieve this goal to you? How would that relate to other conversations we've had? How would that relate to the broader topics that we've been discussing? For example, you and your leadership. So we're linking this coaching conversation, what they want to achieve at the end of it, through to a bigger purpose, if we can. As I mentioned, we'll be exploring the agreement, what we're actually focusing on in more depth. And as I mentioned, so not just, okay, that's what you want to achieve, let's move on, but exploring what those outcomes might look like, feel like, sound like, etc., in more depth. And that also, as I mentioned here, includes the importance of the goal. So how important is the goal? How important is this goal to you? What's the priority? How does it stack up against other goals that you might like to achieve? See how we're going into more depth with our questions there? And also, what's the measure of success? How will you know that you've achieved it? What does success look like? What measurements do you have for yourself? How do you keep yourself accountable? So a whole pile of extra questions are actually coming in there at the beginning to really firm up that agreement. Really great coaching, there is rapport and trust being built, but you'll see great coaches in action. There's much more of a sense of ease and naturalness around that. They're not really working. They're not working hard actually to create that trust and rapport. The big distinction here that I learned in the MCC in particular is that sense of ease and naturalness. The coach doesn't feel the need to prove themselves. So they're not trying to prove themselves, not trying to come up with a good question. They've got a real natural ease around it. So that's something we can develop as well. Of course, asking open questions, very important. Here, it's about responding in the moment. As we talked about, good coaching, it's responding in the moment. But here, the questions that the coach is asking, if you're hitting a top ACC, PCC level now, those questions are really stretching the coachee's thinking. You'll get those moments where the person says, oh, gee, that's a really good question, actually. Yeah, really good question. Let me think about it. And I love it when I hear those questions as well, that really make me stretch my thinking as well. They'll ask powerful questions with genuine curiosity and purpose. So these are questions where there's questions that are, I'm wondering. So I'm wondering what difference that would make. With real curiosity, the curiosity here is not because we've got something in mind or we're trying to lead the coachee down the garden path. We're really open to what that actually might mean. Oh, excellent. So Guy's just dropped into the chat box here. He says, a really great example of what we're talking about in this podcast. And he's given us a Brené Brown podcast on the advice trap and staying curious just a little longer. So thanks for that, Guy. I'm going to put that into Control C. I'm going to put that into the chat box for all attendees, and you can download that link as well. Thank you. Awesome. The other thing that is interesting to be aware of is that at this level, the coach is unattached to the outcomes. Now, I also struggled at one point years ago what this actually meant. I wanted to provide value. I wanted my coachee to achieve what they wanted to achieve, but when we're talking about being unattached to outcomes, we are 100% supporting the client to achieve what they want to achieve. And whether they achieve that or not, what's most important is we're providing that support. So it's how do we not be attached to the outcome? How do we not, if we're attached to the outcome, we're attaching our ability to coach to whether the client achieves something or not. And we need to break that link. Some people are caught up with their ego or their brand or their reputation, like, oh, I'm so good, my client's achieved all this stuff. I'm not really judging that, but what we're talking about here is that we are 100% focused on support rather than being attached to those outcomes. So there you go, a bit of a score here. This will be a score out of 9. A couple of other points for you. We're using the coachee's language and especially taking into consideration the coach's learning style. So you will see much better coaching actually when the coach is adapting their style to meet the needs of the coachee. And also if they're adapting their style to meet the coachee's learning styles, their behavioral preferences, or their personality profile. So, even simple things like we talk about in our Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching program, switching our language so that we're using more visual-based language or auditory-based language or auditory digital-based language. That's really nice coaching, really great coaching when we're taking those things into consideration. The other big thing we'll notice also when a person is doing really great coaching is that they are evoking awareness. They're creating this space that allows the coachee to explore, to discover, to find new perspectives. They're asking really high quality questions that allow that to happen. What is the key learning here? What is the new perspective you can bring to this? Beautiful questions. And that is all supported by what the coach is observing. So the big thing that I learned, particularly from a switch to PCC to MCC, is where the little tip I have for you, and I give it to like rookie coaches as well, is don't step over things that happen for the client. So for example, when I'm being coached, I might every now and again have a bit of a a bit of a nervous laugh, you know. So a really great coach will say, "Oh, Natalie, I heard that nervous laugh. I heard that little laugh. I heard that little sigh. I saw that shift in you when you said that. Perhaps I saw perhaps I saw you tense up a little bit as you were talking about that. Is that would that be right for you? Is that a good interpretation?" And what's happening here is we're not just stepping over these little laughs, little sighs, little whatever's going on. We're actually being curious and exploring. So, and really great coaching, when someone's coaching me really, really well, they'll say, "Oh, Natalie, I heard that nervous laugh. What's happening for you? What's that about?" And so you're picking up on all those little nuances, not just what the client is saying, but what the client is not saying as well. So very nice coaching. That might be one that you can actually stretch a little bit more in your coaching. I'm really focused on that one for myself, that I'm really being present. I'm picking up and calibrating all of what's happening, not just what the client is saying. And then finally, when you're pushing into the PCC level now, we're encouraging action plans, of course. Excuse me, we're encouraging action plans, the way forward. But what we're really focusing on here in the action plans is what the goal means to the coachee. It's not just what they're going to go and do. You'll hear experienced coaches talk about the who, focusing on who the client is, who the client is going to become by doing these things. So it's much more about how does this relate to your values? How does this relate to you now being the leader that you want to be, not just what you're going to do? And that for me was something I had to really try to focus on. Is it's asking those more deeper questions that are focused on who the client is, how they're showing up in the workplace as leaders, for example, not just what they're going to do. And that's really nice coaching. Bridget's over the moon when she hears that kind of coaching. Alrighty, so that is a bit of an absolute steam train through the ICF core competencies and some of the major differences we'll see between the different levels of coaching. Feel free to jump in, yeah. And Maribel, thank you. She says, great list. Feel free. We're using this list now to let people do some self-reflection. You know, as coaches, let's self-reflect and go, which of these areas might I actually focus on a little bit more in my coaching over the next couple of weeks? It's a really great thing for us to do. By the way, you'll be not yet competent, okay? In ICF language, you will fail the coaching. You will fail the coaching exam if you are telling, mentoring, or advising. Now, we know realistically in the workplace, you're going to be potentially doing a bit of a special blend. You'll be doing a bit of coaching, bit of telling, bit of mentoring, and a bit of advising, according to, as we talk about in the Cert 4, according to the person you're working with, according to the situation and the context that you actually find yourself. But just a word of warning, if you happen to be going through an ICF exam, you 100% need to stay out of that space. It's not coaching, so you don't want to be all of a sudden putting on your mentor hat. Judging or frequently giving your opinion, that is not coaching. Using leading questions. So, have you thought about talking to Bob about that topic? Well, that's just leading the person right down the garden path. Stacking your questions. Watch out for this. I have to watch out for this myself. I might ask a question like, so what would you like to see? Or what would you like to do about that? What would you like to see? What would you like to do? Are two completely different questions. And when you stack them on top of each other, it causes confusion for the client. So stay away from that. Stay away from asking heaps of closed questions. I get a little bit annoyed myself. Is that something you can do? Yes. Will you do it? Yes. So we can ask closed questions if we need to nail down the person. But what we're really trying to do is keep those questions nice and open, rather than the can you, could you, should you kind of questions. And we do see this a little bit, beginner coaches asking questions to get more of a story, because it's kind of interesting what the person's talking about. So tell me more and more about that. And what they do is they blow most of the coaching session on actually gathering reality, gathering the story rather than actually coaching. So stay away from that. Watch out that you're not cutting the person off, jumping into the space, expressing your opinion. That's just annoying. And watch out that, unlike me, what I've done on this podcast, we're doing the Coaching Cafe. I'm not doing coaching. Watch out that you're not talking a lot, telling stories. So when the person's talking about their achievements, you go, oh, I really can relate to that. I found the same thing, So we don't have to tell a lot of stories, and we do definitely not want to be monopolizing the conversation. So there you go. As I said, about a bit of a steam train through the ICF core competencies, things to tighten up, make sure that we're tightening up a few things there so that we're not deemed not yet competent. And as I mentioned, this set of insights comes from Bridget Calvert, who's our learning and development manager. She's absolutely amazing. So feel free to connect with her as well if you want to ask her more questions about the ICF core competencies or what she hears in her coaching as well. Alrighty, so we're right on time. People have got to go. We really encourage you to practice, learn, do your continuous improvement. Most importantly, enjoy your coaching. We've got Leader as Coach programs coming up. We've got mental health first aid programs coming up, and we've got Coach Week coming up. So watch out for our information around that. And I'm going to say happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. I'm going to now attempt to put drop that link in. I'll see what I can do. So just bear with me if you're looking for the CCE certificate. Otherwise, just contact us at support@opendoorcoaching.com.au. Happy Friday, everyone. Wonderful to see you. Thanks for joining me. You're very welcome, everyone.